Welcome back to Arise America. As mentioned earlier in the program, President Trump welcomed German Chancellor Angela Merkel to the White House today, and the two held a wide-ranging news conference. Trump thanked Merkel for keeping up, quote, maximum pressure on the North Korean regime in efforts to end its nuclear ambitions. For more on that and a host of headlines out of Washington, joining us now from the Capitol is Arise News Washington correspondent Eric Ham. And here in New York is political strategist Christopher Metzler. Eric, we're going to start with you on North Korea. The summit is historic, but is Trump getting played by Kim Jong-un, or are his rambunctious tweets, as we mentioned before, having the desired effect?
Well, I think what we're seeing is a major charm offensive by Kim Jong-un, moving the ball forward. Now, at the end of the day, no one knows at this point what Kim Jong-un wants, aside from security, both for his regime and for himself. The question becomes, will he or will he not give up his nuclear weapons? That's the major issue going forward. That's the big question that we still just don't know the answer to, and the president himself doesn't know the answer to it, but I guess we'll get that if and when this summit actually takes place.
Yeah, he didn't exactly bring the keys to the nuclear weapons with him to hand them over to the South. Chris, you say that the president got advice from former President Obama. What was that advice, and do you think Trump heeded it?
Yeah, well, on the way out, the President Obama said to him that North Korea is going to be the bane of his existence, so to speak. And I think understanding the difficulties with North Korea, what the president has done extremely effectively at this point is really to amp up the rhetoric to get this moving. And so I think certainly the president deserves a great deal of credit for getting this done.
So you think the rhetoric has helped here? He's been resoundingly criticized, right?
Yeah, I think the rhetoric has helped. I also think that at the end of the day, part of the reason that we see Kim moving in the direction he's moving has to do with sanctions. And by that I mean the sanctions are crippling the elite in his country. Mm-hmm. And since that is occurring, they are basically saying, guy, you need to do something about this. So I think there's a combination of those things going on.
Okay, so domestically
if I could
go ahead, Eric.
If I could just add to that, I completely agree with Chris. In fact, we're seeing, I think, a mirror image of what took place with Iran. If you remember, it was the United States and China and even Russia who came along and added very crippling sanctions on Iran, and that's how we actually got Iran to move to the table to begin negotiations on their nuclear deal, on their nuclear program. And so I think we're seeing that take place here. The only difference is North Korea now is in somewhat of a position of strength because they do, in fact, have a nuclear program. They have nuclear weapons. And so the question becomes, how much are they going to ask in return either for those weapons or for them to shut down their nuclear reactor and their nuclear program? That's simply the question. We just don't have the answer to.
You know, Chris, President Trump is obviously gets enamored with people who present a certain way and who compliment him, and it seems maybe that Kim has figured that out in the way he's been acting the last few days, certainly in South Korea. Do you think that's playing a role in this at all?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think in terms of the relationship of world leaders to each other and to the United States in particular, what they have to do is to figure out what the playbook is. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's certainly a part of it.
And Trump ripped up the playbook.
And Trump has ripped up the playbook. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what's occurred here. He's ripped up the playbook. And as a result of that, what you saw today in those photographs, in my view, was extremely well executed public relations guided by a very strong dose of optics. And that's what you saw in the photographs.
And so, Eric, do you think the president ended this week, therefore, on a high note after yet another week of all sorts of issues?
Well, I think the week ended certainly, I don't know if I would say on a high note. We do know that it's been a very busy week. It's been a very tumultuous week we saw highs and lows. Again, with the withdrawal of his VA nominee to his meeting today with Angela Merkel. And so I think what we're seeing is a 1-2 punch because, again, you've got both France and Germany trying to push this president to not back out of the Iran nuclear deal, because again, that too is another area, another program, another country where we simply just don't know the particulars in terms of where or what direction that could go in, both for the United States and for Iran, given how volatile things are in that region.
That was not Kim Jong-un, by the way, calling into the show. So, Chris, what has to be next on the follow-through here?
Well, I think on the follow-through, you now have officially the Secretary of State, Pompeo. At this point, what needs to occur is the planning for this meeting. The questions, again, go back to what is he willing to give up? If I were a betting man, I would say he is not going to give up 100% of the weapons. That's just simply not going to happen. He's not testing because of the collapse of the mountain there. And at this point, it has to be very careful, very well orchestrated planning on the behalf of the State Department and the United States to move this forward.
What does détente, and this goes to either of you, look like between North Korea and South Korea? Does it get to the point of Germany and East Germany?
Well, I think it could get to that point, which is part of the reason that, you know, we have to be very careful and very meticulous as to how we move forward here.
Okay.
Also, I think, and Duarte, I'm just real quickly, and I'm sure Duarte may have touched on this as well. I think seeing North Korea, South Korea, much like East and West Germany, I think is probably the best we're going to get, because keep in mind, China, still the 800-pound gorilla, does not want to see a unified Korea.
Okay. Let's move on to some domestic issues here, and this has been being played up very much in the political press. The House chaplain was unexpectedly fired this week, and it sent shockwaves through the House of Representatives. My understanding is the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, fired him. He did not retire or quit. Eric, how did this non-political role become so politically charged?
You know, that's the $60,000 question right now, because this came out of nowhere, even for Republicans. In fact, there have been many questions that have been thrown Speaker Ryan's way, wondering why was this chaplain actually fired from his job. Even New York Congressman Peter King, the explanation that he got from Speaker Ryan, he admitted that simply was not good enough, that you have some members who felt that he wasn't executing his duties in terms of moving them regarding their faith in a manner in which they thought was beneficial. That just hasn't worked for many people, and especially on the left. And so I think what you're seeing now is a major snafu taking place, particularly when, again, the House, there's so much turmoil, and Speaker Ryan is on his way out the door. Why make a move like this when every move that the Speaker makes could potentially be seen as political, particularly as it relates to a position and a role that traditionally has not been political?
Yeah, now all of a sudden the chaplain is political in Washington. Christopher, I heard one GOP representative said that they want a family man, quote unquote, in the position, and some are saying that that was a rather anti-Catholic, because the chaplain in this case was Catholic, an anti-Catholic comment.
Yeah, and I have to agree that, in fact, that is an anti-Catholic position. I don't understand for the life of me why Speaker Ryan would engage in this unforced era. He's got enough problems that he needs to worry about. There's some in the House who want him to resign his position immediately.
That's right.
And so as a result of that, he ought to be focusing on that. Rather than this ridiculous thing of firing the chaplain. This is the first time that I can remember that a chaplain has ever been fired. I'm baffled by these shenanigans.
I mean, do lawmakers actually have a call to religion when they're in office there? The chaplain occupies a major role?
Well, You know, according to Speaker Ryan, you know, he was told that the father was not serving the needs, the pastoral needs of some of the members. I don't even know what that means.
Okay. All right, let's go back to international news. Angela Merkel was in Washington today meeting with the president. The relationship has not been as chummy as Trump's relationship, certainly with the French president. They weren't touching each other. I don't think they held hands, but there are many serious issues. They are perhaps, outside the British, the most important partner we have in Europe, Eric.
That's right. And so today, this was another opportunity for the president to actually move this direction in a place where there can be comfort both for the United States and for larger Europe. And I think what you're also seeing at play, and this hasn't gotten as much, I think, press and attention that it should, is you see two major Western powers, two major European powers trying to make a play for the most powerful of Europe. So you had Emmanuel Macron, who was here earlier this week, and now today you have Angela Merkel. And so I think there's a little bit there of each of them trying to exert influence and say, you know, and determine which one is the alpha dog in Europe. And of course, this role here in the United States, I think, is a major play at that. Where I think this could help the president is yesterday we saw the Senate actually confirm his ambassador to Germany. So even though there may not be as good a relationship, as warm a relationship as we'd like to see between the United States and Germany, I think with his ambassador there, I think that should help ease some of the tensions and some of the frostiness in that relationship.
And Chris, wrapping this up on the topic of confirmations, you say that Trump's nominees are being unfairly held up in the Senate?
Yeah, I do not think that it should take as long to confirm a number of these nominees. I mean, frankly, the president gets to choose who he wants, and absent some nonsense, I think the nominees should move quickly through the confirmation process. And I'm sorry that there's no bromance between the president and Merkel, but hey, that role's already taken.
Good conversation, gentlemen. Eric Ham, Arise News Chief Washington Correspondent, and political strategist Christopher Metzler. Thank you both.
Thank you.
You're watching Arise America. Stay
Thanks,
with
Andrew.
us.